Hello everyone and welcome to Star Citizen Addicts Anonymous. I know I haven't done a video under that name in a while, but they're coming back, and today I have a very special guest. It's Brian Chambers from the Frankfurt office of Cloud Imperium Games. Well, actually, Foundry 42, right? Same thing,
Foundry 42.
Different?
Well, Foundry 42 is the European leg of development, you could say. So when we started here in Frankfurt, we fell under Foundry 42, run by Aaron in the UK.
Okay. What are all those wonderful names behind you?
I think it was last October, there was an event called SitCon, and it was an event from the funded and run and set up and everything by the German community out here. And when we were done, they had this big placard, and they all signed it and threw it to the office for us. So
That is...
it was cool. I think they had right around 500 people show up. It was nuts.
That is awesome. Nuts. Yeah. No, that's amazing. Nuts, yeah, maybe, but amazing. This game has so much support from people that have been around Chris Roberts for years, and even new people that, you know, those things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, think about it at CitizenCon when you were over there. There were only supposed to be, like 30 to 50 people there, and how many people showed up at the different bar citizen events, you know?
Yeah, no, that was awesome. I met so many. I hadn't been back to LA for like, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, and it's the first time that I was actually at the LA CIG office. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm here, I'm staying in a hotel, I might as well go to the different bar citizens, you know. And next thing you know, I'm there, and there's 100 people, and nobody, not everyone can fit inside, and we're sitting outside. It's awesome. It's honestly a little overwhelming. We had one where I think me and Aaron were coming into, and it took us like a half an hour to get in, just because people wanted to stop and chat, and me and Aaron are the type to both stop and say hi and chat. So, it's cool. It's a good experience.
Yeah, it was incredible to get to meet you all there because, I've been talking about the game for a better part of 4 years now, and wow, being able to get to see everyone in one place at one time was great. So what were you doing before you came to Cloud Imperium Games?
Before starting here and starting up the office here in Frankfurt, I was actually at Crytek.
Okay. So
also in Frankfurt.
Big help.
Yeah. I was already here and close and local. So I was their senior producer on Rise, which was a Xbox One launch title.
So, I remember that one very well. And that was one that Chris was showing off the PBR graphics on.
Yeah. It fell short a little bit, I think, on gameplay, in retrospect when I look at it, but graphically, I mean, it was pretty,
Yeah, well, most of the launch titles for Xbox and PlayStation do fall short. They're there for launch, not for content and for depth. But there were some things that happened as soon as your team got put together and started developing or helping the development of the game. And one of them I could look at was the stretch goal that was supposed to be way in the future of procedural planets. Could you explain to me the breakthrough that maybe you brought to the team that allowed that to happen faster?
Yeah, I'll try.
Okay.
I mean, we have a good group of talented guys, right? And part of that is a slight understatement, especially on the engineering side. We have strong people across all disciplines, but the engineers here are incredibly familiar with the engine. They know what it's capable of. They know what it's not capable of. So when they need it to do something, they know exactly where to start and what to do. One of our senior technical directors, Marco Corbetta, had kind of on his own and for a while had a large interest in procedural generation, right? When we started, procedural generation was on the roadmap. It was, okay, in another X amount of months. And is that 6 or 9 months or 12 months, right? You have a tremendous amount of tasks that you line up. Hey, let's get physics there. Let's get optimization. Let's get this and this and this. And we sit down with Chris and the rest of the directors and so on, and we prioritize what those are. The procedural stuff was definitely on the roadmap, but it was for further out. Marco had come up to me at one point and said, "Hey, I want to do this quicker. I want to do this sooner." And I said, "Okay, well, we got to work with Chris and so on." And he goes, "No, no, I can kind of do this a little bit more in my spare time. I just need kind of focused attention." And so we basically internally here just said, "Yeah, go for it." So we kind of did it on the side a little bit, made his workload a little bit less in other things. And he pushed and pushed and pushed and even worked from home here and there. And honestly, he showed up in the office and we really hadn't seen a lot of the progress. And he then threw a build over to Hannes, who's our cinematics director. And there was a tiny little dot out in space. And he said, "Fly there." And we started flying. And 10 minutes later, we're like, "Dude, come on," right? Because then the dot was just this big. And we're like, come on, come on. So we tweaked the values, made the ship go a bit quicker. And next thing you know, we, just as you guys experienced when we showed it off like a pupil to planet, that's what we saw, right?
Awesome.
So internally, we all got goosebumps and we're like, what the hell did we just see? And from there, we've just been pushing and pushing. And we have found it to be true that the procedural and the approach on the procedural planets are informing a lot of things. They're informing, the methodology and the art pipelines, right? How we're generating the art so it can live within the procedural tool set that we have. And terrains can blend and still look to the highest level of detail they need. It's also, as I say, informed our tool set. So once we understood what the base tech was, we've now generated tools that the procedural generation is just in a sense, a good foundation to allow the artist to play with, right? We now have the ability to put numerous objects and rocks and trees or whatever in what we call a paint bucket. We get onto a side of a planet and we paint. And each rock, each tree is a slightly different orientation, maybe slightly different color, slightly different girth, slightly different height, to really give that sense of, to kill any repetition.
Wait. So not only are the planets themselves procedurally generated, but the art you paint onto, I mean, I know that there's purpose behind the art because it has to match the lore, and I'm sure David's team has to tell you what each planet is actually supposed to look like. But when you're using those brushes to paint that on there, even those items are procedurally generated as they're placed down?
No, so we have a team of artists that are generating those individual assets.
Okay.
But then they generate those assets within certain parameters. So now once we can paint those on, each asset then could be slightly procedurally modified, if that makes sense.
All right. So there's a lot of question about the size of planets. Now, there's a lot. I mean, Chris has always said that the game has to be fun and has to keep those boring aspects of true, real life out of it. Is there a range of planet sizes you can give us, smallest to largest bodies?
If I came up with a number right now, it would probably be a lie, just because I haven't seen what the latest numbers they have. I mean, I see the planets every day, but I see them up close, right?
Yeah.
I see it up close. It's doesn't give us a true indication of size. I know we started with some, I think you take Earth and you go, cool, here's the size of Earth, and you get on it. And I think even when you go distance from planet to planet, I think all of those things are modified from real world slightly. So just as you say, like Chris says, at the end, it's got to be fun, right? And if it's going to take me half hour in real time to get one from one planet to another, is that fun? But then you have the combination as well of different asteroids that are in between those, different what we're calling, truck stops, different satellites.
Okay.
So there will be gameplay between planet to planet. So unfortunately, if I gave you a number on the min and max of planets, it would probably be wrong and someone would probably yell at me.
Okay, well, that makes sense. So you're saying that I mean, I look at it from a point of view that if you really have an Earth-sized planet and it has Moscow, London, New York, do you really want to experience a real-time travel distance between those pieces in a game? Because that's like Flight Simulator is, and is that something that you want this game to be? A flight simulator on every planet that you create? Or do you want to create rich, immersive worlds that you got fun?
I know a lot of attention has gone into that on the design side, and it probably will continue for a while, right?
Yeah.
I know they in the process are going through and ticking off, yes, no, this makes sense, this doesn't make sense. And then you slowly will come up with a rule set that they'll apply to everything. But yeah, you're right. And like I said in the example, the very first planet we saw, we got in and started flying, and he just wanted to show it off to us.
Yeah.
And we literally were all standing there for 10 minutes in anticipation going, okay, come on, right?
Yeah.
So even for that, we were like, wait, no, we wanted some type of immediate gratification. But
Okay.
I'm confident in the end we'll find the right balance. Some will make sense, I'm sure, to have further distance, right?
Yeah.
These are ones that maybe there's more of a purpose and people really want to get there to get a certain thing or mine a certain thing, or here's the good guys versus bad guys, or, so it'll be interesting once we get it a little further in and we start balancing it a little bit more.
Okay. So moving ahead, because this is an impromptu interview and I didn't collect many questions, I'm interested in Lumberyard because I know that the Star Engine, which you use, Crytek, where you come from, so the Cry Engine, and Lumberyard are all pretty much born from the same engine. So there was little to no effort to move Star Engine over to Lumberyard. What advantages at this point does Lumberyard offer you that the old engine didn't, and what tools have you been able to make use of over the last month or so, 2 months since it's been announced?
I mean, I think you have AWS in the whole back end, and that's all stuff that's being driven by the Austin team, right? They've evaluated Amazon's and Lumberyard's back end for quite a while to really see what the advantages would be. And there are some strong ones, but they would speak more on those. I also think with Lumberyard, there was really little to no effort that it took us to switch. And that's 100% honest. I think we could have switched a lot earlier, but in stuff like this, there's always lawyers involved and so on, right? I know we got a little bit of flack of not being as vocal about it early on when, we started looking at it. But again, there's lawyers involved. And until we kind of had clearance for everything, we just wanted to go, okay, let's wait till it's official and everything's inked and dotted. I think one of the big advantages we get is, if you look at where Lumberyard's going to go and where they hope to go, there's going to be a lot of support for the gaming community. There's a lot of money behind that company. They have a tremendous amount of engineers and marketing staff and back-end staff. So I think it's actually going to aid us all over the place. Okay. I have calls with them every other week where I talk with one of their tech guys and I get information from them and we share stuff back and forth. There's an interest in, if we ever struggle with something or we see something else they're pushing on or using, that's something we potentially have immediate access to, right? So CryEngine was an incredibly strong base. Right? The CryEngine support is fairly minimal at this point. So if you look at even just the support side and the amount they're pushing and progressing, if you line those up side by side, then Lumberyard definitely is the smarter route to take.
Okay. I like that answer because you mentioned the gaming community, and the most exciting feature I see about it, because we have a lot of Star Citizen streamers, people I like to watch, like Wolfosaurus and like Captain Richard and so many more. board gamer.
Yep.
And the tools that are there for the community of streamers is very exciting.
Yeah, and that's specifically why I said the gaming community, because it's not solely this is what they could provide engine-wise and engine support. However, if it was based solely on that, I think we would still have made the switch. But you look at Twitch and kind of what they're pushing there, and because they have their own internal interests in games and kind of making their games successful across from casual to even larger, more mature games, they're looking at the community and they want to push it as well. I mean, I recently read something just earlier today that I think Twitch is opening something where they're going to start potentially selling games through Twitch and so on. So, I mean,
it's through Amazon Prime.
Yeah, I mean, who knows in the next, but they're talking actually, you know, Twitch itself is kind of the front end. You're buying games. Yeah. So there's some article out on that today. So it'll be interesting, but they have emphasis to grow community. They have emphasis to help community communicate tighter and closer, and by default we have access to that. So that's awesome for our community.
Okay. So as we're getting closer to the end of this first interview, what pieces of the game currently you're doing planetary systems and other technology? So what technology is your team responsible for at this point?
Technology goes all over the place.
Or development.
If we look at development, and I'm going to mentally think of the team as I walk through the office. I have 4 AI programmers. So we have a lead AI programmer, and that's both for NPCs and ship AI. We're now building up a small gameplay team, so gameplay programmers. We just hired in a lead who started with us, I believe, last week. And it was very funny. The first 2 days he was in the office, we threw him to the UK to go talk with those guys. So day one, we gave him a plane ticket and said, all right, get out of here. We have a large push on design here. We have Todd Pappy, who is our design director, with a large team of system designers and level designers. I would say more focused on the PU than anything, but also aiding with Squadron because there's a lot of crossover since it's the same code base. We have a large environment art team now here, so 9 people in environment art. We just hired in a lead for that, I think, a month and a half ago. We just hired in a senior lighting artist, so he's working close with those guys. We have the engine team, and in charge of all the core engines. So from that's 2 senior technical directors, 3 senior engine programmers, 2 guys focused on physics, 1 guy focused on optimization, another guy focused on animation. We just started a tools programmer, so they're pushing tools. We own all the weapons here, so that's both FPS weapons and ship weapons.
Awesome.
Small little QA team, and we own all the cinematics for Squadron 42. So we've started originally with, I think, 6 or 7 of us, seeing where we would grow, who would be interested. You know, it seems like I blink, we're now up to 65 people here in Frankfurt.
Wow, that is amazing. Because I remember watching the videos of when you guys were getting the new space to move into. So now you've filled it out pretty much, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we expanded last August, and I think we were counting with IT today with some new guys starting this week. I think we have 10 desks left.
Wow. And I'm sure you'll fill them as you get closer to Squadron release and pushing forward on 3.0, hopefully.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right.
It's kind of flow in hiring. We're very picky in who we hire. We want to make sure that they're incredibly skilled, and that they're also, a thing that's important to me is that they are into the genre of the game that we're making. I've turned down incredibly qualified candidates in the past because in talking it through, you realize their passion isn't in the genre that we're creating. And I want people to come to work to go, man, this is awesome. Look what I get to work on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I work for a company where the minute we release something, everyone's always talking about the next thing. So 2.6.1 is out, and people are already talking about the next thing. How does your team or you personally think of 3.0? Is it the beginning of the real PU, or is it another stepping stone?
I think internally, kind of casually, we definitely see it as the beginning, the solid beginning of PU. Because when you look at all the things that are in there, the variety that's in there, the choices that the player can make, the direct influences they have on things around them, I think that is it's a big solid foundation to build on. Absolutely. And we're just as excited about getting that out to people just as people are. And yeah, every other day somebody's, oh, dude, tell me when. And it's like, well, we're pushing hard and we're working on it. And we're building up the team and we're putting our efforts towards it. And I know as we get closer, more and more will be said, and eventually we'll have a solid date for people.
Yeah. I wish Chris wouldn't give general or specific dates of release, because I'd rather you guys tell me when it's ready than when it's going to be ready, because I know that the way that you design things is that you want to release it when it's when it's going to be the best experience for the player to help the alpha move along. So I like that you do that.
I agree too, and that's a bit of a back and forth, right? Because we want to show people that we're making progress, right? And if we show off too much, you never have like this big reveal to give.
Right.
Take the pupil for Planet, for example. That was our engineers being adamant that they didn't want to show anything until they had something that they thought kicked ass, right? And they're like, no, I don't want to show this until we get it together. And then if you think the first time we showed it, it was on a live stream, and Sean Tracy and Chris go, oh, wait, hold on. Let's show you this little thing we did, right? And then Sean Tracy did it live afterwards, and you're just like, whoa, right? And people were freaking out. So
yeah, that was awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you giving me the time, and this time slot seems to work. So every now and then, maybe once a month, whatever we could come up with, could I come back to you with more questions?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd be more than happy to. I like when people have questions and they're interested. I mean, when I look at the backers, I look like people yourself sharing information and pushing what we're doing. I mean, I almost see it as part of my job to hang out and explain and talk about what's going on,
Well, you guys at CID from each one of the offices have always made me feel like I'm part of your team, and I appreciate that. For those of you that are watching, I have a Discord that will be linked in the comments section below, and on that Discord there'll be a new chat area for asking Brian questions that I'll go through, sift through, and bring to him. And I'm going to try to keep his interviews this short, about 20 to 25 minutes, because it's hard for him to give us time, and it's a lot of hours between us two.
Yeah,
6 hours.
No questions about the hair, man. I get them all the time.
Well,
Please.
People wanted to ask me if you performed any miracles. Jesus.
None that I could speak of.
Well, thank you for joining me, Brian. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, anytime.
All right, and with that said, you all be safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.